Right now, the day's biggest news stories from a Vegas perspective. This is the Vegas Take with Sharp and Shapiro.
All right, welcome back. It is the Vegas Take. Sharp and Shapiro. So glad you can join us with Chris Wynn in studio as well. If you hadn't heard, folks, a really big ruling took place yesterday in regards to Sandy Hook. The Supreme Court saying that survivors and relatives of victims of the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting can now pursue their lawsuit against the maker of the rifle that was used to kill 26 people. Make no mistake about it, this is a big deal. It is a big decision. I'm going to say this right now. Listen, I'm not going to necessarily say I am anti-gun, but I've talked a lot about the assault weapons and the weapons that are used in some of these shootings. I guess you could say I am anti-gun when it comes to those specific weapons. But with that being said, I am not for this lawsuit. I do not agree with it. Here's why I don't agree with it. If the gun manufacturer is not breaking the law, and clearly they did not break the law in my opinion, if they're not breaking the law, then how can you sue them? You have to change some of the laws that are on the books. Now, if these guns are illegal to be sold and they're selling them to the public, then that would be against the law, and I would totally be okay with the lawsuit. I think this sets a very dangerous precedence. What are you going to sue? Every single gun manufacturer? Every single gun that is used in a murder? No, you can't do that. Let's change the laws. Let's have red flag laws put in place. Let's do something with the mentally ill. I think this is a bad judgment, and it does set a bad precedence. I don't blame the gun manufacturers. Okay, I blame the politicians for not putting laws on the books in place to protect us. I blame some members of the NRA for being way too influential with our politicians. But anyway, I figured what better person to have in studio than discuss this. Of course, his name is Bob Irwin. He actually did a little bit of radio back in the day here. His book is called The Reality of Armed Self-Defense. He's owned the gun store out there, former owner of that gun store for years, and he is extremely knowledgeable when it comes to guns. Bob, thank you so much for being here in studio. Really appreciate it. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Sure. Well, this is your expertise. So, first of all, I would imagine you agree with me. I disagree with this judgment. I think it sets a bad precedence. What do you say?
Well, I think it sets the wrong precedent, but you're misreading the decision. It's the Connecticut Supreme Court that they were upholding that the people do have a right to sue the gun manufacturers, but if you read the entire decision, not just what was written in the headline in the RJ, all they affirmed was the right to sue gun manufacturers. Even the people who are for the lawsuit feel that it has virtually no chance of surviving. They affirmed the right to sue, and the suit is based on the fact they were marketing guns purposely to teenagers and mentally ill people, and they're going to need to prove.
How could they prove that?
Well, that's the thing. I don't know how it can be proved.
They're marketing to the mentally ill?
To mentally ill individuals in America?
That doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that's weird.
What they are hoping, it says in the end of the article, is that the lawsuit will allow them to get into internal memos that Remington and Olympic Arms and so forth, the distribution manufacturers, had, and they hope, literally that's their term, they hope that it will show they knew they were intentionally marketing to the mentally ill.
But we all agree in studio that this is going to go nowhere.
It's going to go
no chance of winning this, right?
It's going to go nowhere. But the basics of my point is they didn't win the decision to sue the manufacturers except for wrongful marketing to the mentally ill and teenagers.
So let's talk about what I think the people that should be sued, and some of them are being sued. The guy from InfoWars, what's his name?
Alex Jones.
Alex Jones, who I think is a nut job, and all he cares about is clicks. He made these assumptions that he believes that shooting never happened. He hurt a lot of people with his comments because he's a nut, right? Now, many of us could just laugh it off and say, hey, this guy's a nut, right, to people like us. But if you lost a daughter or a son or a family member and you hear some nut job that actually has a platform say things like that, you can sue for damages. So I'm okay with that lawsuit. That should have no place in our society, number one. Number two, I think you could sue the mother who died by the hands of her son, because I think that mother was extremely irresponsible in this way. Her son was clearly mentally ill and deranged. Should have never learned how to shoot a weapon. Should have never had access to guns in the house. Ultimately, it cost her own life. So you can sue her family, I believe, for financial damages. I would be okay with that lawsuit. I'm not sure you can sue anybody else. But do you agree with me there on those two lawsuits?
Yeah, and in fact, her estate was sued.
Good.
And I believe that is still in the court system.
Good.
But she was, even though she's dead, her estate has been sued, so her remaining family cannot receive any funds.
Good.
Which I think she's fine with anyway. So
good. I'm happy with that at least, but it's not going to bring those kids back, sadly. The number to call, by the way, if you want to be a part of this conversation, we're talking about the Sandy Hook ruling, which allows a lawsuit in Connecticut to the gun manufacturers. The number to call is 702-257-5396, 702-257-5396. Before I take a few calls, I just want to give you my general opinions on guns, so on and so forth. I think what Beto O'Rourke said, obviously you're going to disagree with that. We want to confiscate all your guns, mandatory buyback by the government. That's never going to happen. But I think there are several things that need to happen immediately. First of all, the banning of bump stocks is not going to do anybody any good. Anybody that knows anything about guns could make their own bump stock, right, Bob? Okay, so that's number one. Number two, we need red flag laws put in place. Listen, here's what I mean by that. Let me give you an example. If a husband threatens his wife with text messages or proof with a phone call, says, I'm going to kill you when I get back from blah, 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 blah. I'm going to get my gun and I'm going to kill you, okay? And the wife calls the police, and there is a text message that has proof of that. I don't know if it should be a ban for a month or 6 months. Let the politicians decide on that. But I am not comfortable with that guy carrying a weapon after making a serious threat like that. That's what I mean by red flag laws. What happened in Parkland? 80 times the police were called to that kid's house, yet he was legally allowed to purchase a gun. That should have never happened. Now, you can make the argument, well, the police didn't do their job. Fine, I'll agree with that, but there still needs to be red flag laws put in place. And many Republicans, they want nothing to do with red flag laws. I disagree with that. Now, we know that we need to do something with the mentally ill. We want to make sure that guns are in the hands of responsible individuals, not the mentally ill. And even people on the right, would agree with that. Now, how do we go about doing that? I don't know, but we're not doing a good enough job. I think those are the things that we need to focus on, Bob.
I agree. The problem with the red flag laws is the enforcement. And where we have under the Constitution a right to keep and bear arms, unfortunately in some people's minds, and we have a right to the takings clause that says you cannot take property without just compensation, so on and so on. The Second Amendment and the takings laws fall right into the problem. The incident you just described, a husband threatening by text message, he's committing a felony. Mm-hmm. He doesn't have a right to possess firearms, so his firearms can be seized under current law without the red flag thing.
But you would agree in some cases that person will not be arrested for that. Sometimes they don't enforce it when they should.
I agree the police sometimes don't enforce it.
Right, and that needs to be enforced, especially in this day and age.
If a husband sends his wife a message via Facebook and not via text message, then legally local PD can't get involved and he has to go through the FBI, and that process takes a long time.
I agree, and
a lot of that stuff happens digitally.
I agree, and Bob, and what if it's just a verbal thing? There's no text messages, there's no absolute 100% proof, and it's her word versus his, and the police show up and he says, I didn't say that at all. Why not do some type of 24-hour or 48-hour, hold when there's something serious and it needs to be investigated? But anyway.
They currently do that.
They do.
If the person is committing a felony, a threat to life or something like that, the police will go in. We always have, and seize guns from people. And
why didn't that work in Parkland then? What did they not do?
No system works every time, and people fall through the cracks. But
80 times though, police called to his house 80 times.
Well, I understand that.
Yeah.
The police failed to do something they should have done and should have noticed. The police, I'm an ex-cop, as you know, and they can't be everywhere all the time. It is really difficult to handle each individual case when it's happening in mass. We're finding that with the homeless. What are they going to do with this?
Right.
I was at a Republican meeting last night where some speakers from the audience took Joe Lombardo to task because he doesn't imprison misdemeanor offenders, but he does.
Right.
The whole argument is based on the fact that he doesn't do it. Of course
Well,
he doesn't
listen,
do it.
everyone would agree, Bob, that this is a very complex issue and there's no easy fix. Why don't we take some phone calls? Bob Irwin joining us in studio. He's the author of the book, The Reality of the Armed Self-Defense. And we're talking about this Sandy Hook ruling, which allows some of the family members of those who lost their lives in Sandy Hook to file a lawsuit against the gun manufacturer on the Connecticut Supreme Court. We're taking your phone calls at 702-257-5396. Again, that number to call is 257-5396. Why don't we start off with Chris? Chris, thanks for calling in. You're on with the Bob Irwin. What's on your mind?
Hi. First of all, I'm not even from the area. I just listened to your show and was very informative. One thing I wanted to say is I'm a moderate in the Second Amendment. I've been shooting for 40 years, and I have, believe it or not, a bunch of different types of weapons collecting from World War II on. My biggest thing, I had this discussion even last week with a DA up in Washington State, and that is that both sides are being disingenuous about telling the whole truth, but it mainly comes down to what verbiage are we using? If you can't speak the same language, what is an assault weapon, what is not an assault weapon, that you can't even have a conversation. Like Biden said that he doesn't want a magazine that holds 100 clips. That was just the other day.
Well, let's have, and that's a fair point, Chris. And by the way, I agree with you. It happens on both sides, the left and the right. But let me give you I'm not a gun expert, okay? I don't have the knowledge that Bob has. I don't have the knowledge that you have. But I will say this, and I say this in logical terms. The types of guns that were used that killed 58 people in Las Vegas, the types of guns that were used in the Texas El Paso shooting, basically the types of guns that were used in the last 20 mass shootings in this country, for the most part, are the guns that I don't want sold on the streets. That's the best way I can explain it.
Here's the one problem with that, and this is just, again, speaking from a person, and your guy from the gun store can even admit it. An AR-15, which of the 49 calibers are you going to do? Are you banning my pistol? Are you banning my shotgun? Are you banning my 22? Are you
okay, so let me respond by saying this. Was it a pistol that killed 58 people in Las Vegas?
Was it a 22?
It's the same gun.
Was it a 22?
I'm asking you a very specific question, and you just talked about being honest. Now I want you to be honest. Did a pistol... Okay, so I'm asking you a question. It's a yes or no. Was it a pistol that was used to kill 58 people in Las Vegas? Yes or no, sir?
Okay. The answer to that is no, but it was
okay. So let's move on. Okay, so let's,
no.
You're the one. Listen, hold on a second. You're the one who brought up. You're the one. Hold on. You're the one who just. Sir, you can lecture me on guns all you want to, but I asked you a specific question. You're the one who used the word pistol. Okay, don't bring up the word pistol in this conversation. It wasn't used in Texas, El Paso. It wasn't used in Las Vegas. Talk about the pistols that were used to execute 58 people in Las Vegas, sir.
Sir, you don't understand the terminology. This is what I'm trying to
I just asked you if a pistol was used, and you said no, so don't bring it up.
An AR-15 is also a pistol. An AR-15 is also a shotgun. What are you trying to do?
We don't look. We don't need to get into the weeds about the details. We've seen mass shootings in this country. You can just decipher what type of weapons were used in these mass shootings. There's a reason why. Okay, that this has been something in the media that's been discussed. There's a reason why American gun culture right now is being talked about. It's because in this country, it's specific to mass shootings.
And Bob,
there's been 200 plus mass shootings in this country. In the last decade or whatever it is, the numbers are ridiculously high in America as opposed to any other country around the world.
All right, let me let Bob and Bob, am I wrong in saying that when you use the term pistol, most people see that as a handgun? Am I wrong in making that assumption?
No, that's the common.
So what is this guy talking about?
Terminology.
Why would he use the term pistol then in regards to these mass shootings?
I think what the guy on the phone is trying to say. The 58 people who were killed in Las Vegas by gunfire from what they describe as a military-style weapon.
Correct.
During the time period this year in the United States, more people have been killed with handguns, about 9 to 1, as were killed with long guns.
And I don't disagree with that.
And when we pointed that out on the gun side, some people did, that handguns are what's actually taking all the lives. Then the left simply said, well, that's true, we agree, so we should outlaw handguns. And that's how we got the new stuff pending in Congress that outlaws not only rifles, but all handguns.
And I understand, Bob, what you're saying, but let me bring this up. When was the last time you heard of a large mass shooting that was used at the hands of what you're talking about, a handgun?
Well, it's fairly rare, but it does happen. Several of them.
Rare.
Some of them were with handguns with extended magazines and so forth. The Gabby Gifford case and so forth. and that was blamed on the extended magazines. It was blamed on this and blamed on this shooter and blamed on everybody else.
But Bob, I think the point I'm trying to make, Bob, is that the handgun wasn't used on October 1, killing 58 people. And handguns are practical, and military weapons are not, for average citizens. That's the point I'm trying to make.
But handguns are used in about 85 to 90% of gang killings,
and that's
like the ones that happened in Chicago that are not even being discussed.
I understand, but we're talking about mass shootings right now. You're right. Gun violence is across the globe, especially in this country, and many of those shootings or murders occur with handguns. I agree with you, Bob. Let's take some more phone calls. 257-5396, 702-257-5396. Why don't we go to Stephen? Stephen, you are next on the Vegas Take. You're on with Bob Irwin. Is this Stephen? No, I believe that's there we go. Stephen, are you there? Go ahead.
This is Stephen, yes.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Bob, I was wondering if you had any experience with this federal watch list. The reason I ask is I have a personal friend. He was a Metro policeman for about 6 or 7 years before he went to work for the Gaming Control Board. He became one of the top detectives for the Gaming Control Board. And then when he retired, he spoke out on a number of public affairs, and he got on the federal watch list. And it's caused him all kinds of problems. He did 5 weeks up at the Lakes Crossing for a psychological evaluation.
All right, let's see what Bob. Let's let Bob respond to that, and we appreciate your question. Thank you for calling. Go ahead, Bob. What do you say?
Well, the federal watch list is a usable tool for counterterrorism. The problem is it's really easy to get on and really hard to get off. Mm-hmm. And I would like to see it improved, the research on it. But the problem is, of course, we're looking at hundreds of thousands. They're looking at international terrorists and gangbangers and cartel members and so forth to get on that watch list for coming in and out of the country on aircraft. And it is a monumental task to research all of those individuals. And are they going to get it wrong? Yes, they are. The judge sending your associate there up to Lakes Crossing is a pretty serious step. That means a psychologist on the local level determined he needed to be evaluated, and the evaluation is usually a week or 2. 5 months is a long time. Mm-hmm. I would suggest that there may be some mental issues they found that caused that. Again, I don't know. I'm not a psychologist. So
I wish you were, because I need some help in that category, Bob.
Well,
that's for sure.
I've heard that from a lot of sources. So
let's take a few more phone calls. You have good sources, by the way. 702-257-5396 is the number to call. Bob Irwin joining us in studio. The author of the book, The Reality of Armed Self-Defense. Let's go to Brian. Brian, you're next on the Vegas Take. We lost Brian. 257-5396 is the number to call. Let's go to Gary. Gary, I believe you're next. You're on with Bob. Go ahead, Gary.
Hey, I'm trying to stay focused. I'm a Second Amendment advocate, but psychologists like Clinical Carl, say I'm mentally ill. All right, somebody's going to send me because we're going to take care of the mentally ill for a change. Which psychologists are they going to assign to me? I lean very conservative, so they're going to send me to a psychologist like a liberal, and vice versa. How does that? Do I have a right to oppose that? Can I sue somebody?
You want to sue? You want to sue somebody if they send you to a psychologist that might be liberal? Is that what I'm getting, Gary? Is that your point of this call? Okay, well, that's utterly ridiculous.
I'm being bigoted and discriminated because I'm mentally ill.
What do you mean you're being bigoted?
Why are you being bigoted?
What are you talking about?
You're saying a psychologist can't do their job because of their political ideology? Is that what you're trying to say?
That's absurd.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm trying to say.
Well, then that's ridiculous.
Gary, maybe that's
going to give you a different
Gary,
diagnosis.
with all due respect, Gary, maybe that's why you're mentally ill. 702-257-5396 is the number to call. Again, that number, if you want to join us, we're joined by Bob Irwin, 702-257-5396. Look, there's no doubt about it. Gun violence is on the rise. Hate crimes are on the rise. And Bob is right. A lot of these murders that are taking place, at killings, gang shootings, you name it, could be at the hands of some sort of handgun. He's absolutely right. But I'm specifically talking about 58 people that lost their lives in Las Vegas. I'm talking about the Sandy Hook shooting. I'm talking about the shootings in Texas, El Paso, even the Gilroy lawsuit that's going on right now. And I personally believe, in my opinion, Bob, some of these guns that are used in these mass shootings should not be on the market to anyone. I believe some of these weapons, not all of them, but some of these weapons are weapons of war. I believe they should be used by our military. I believe they should be used by law enforcement. Whether you're a law-abiding citizen or not, I'm just not comfortable with some of these weapons out there to be bought on the streets.
It's you're obviously welcome to your opinion, and a lot of people in the country share that opinion. Unfortunately, the truth is that AR-15s are used for self-defense way more often than they're used for mass shootings. Mass shootings, as horrible as they are a tiny fraction of the gun violence in this country. And Senator Bloomberg and so forth have decided that the gun is the problem. As you know, I do expert witness work in shootings, and I have never found one where the gun pulled its own trigger, the gun pointed itself at another human being. The gun is an object which is used by a deranged or a normal or any person.
Well, can I ask you a question, though?
The gun is not the issue.
Let me interject and ask you a question. If your son or daughter or granddaughter or whoever is, God forbid, in a school, and you have a deranged, mentally ill individual walking in there with a gun, would you rather have them God forbid, if you had to make a decision like this, but I think it's to my point, would you rather have them use the type of weapons that were used in Texas, El Paso, or Las Vegas, or would you rather have them have a handgun?
I would rather they weren't there at all.
Of course.
I would rather an armed, trained security officer was on scene.
Of course.
And metal detectors, and they could stop it. And where those things have been put in place, they have stopped school shootings.
I agree, and I think any logical person would agree with what you just said. But the reason why I asked you that specific question is because I think it's a logical question. And you want the type of weapon that cannot expound as many rounds of ammunition because it would cause mass casualties and more carnage. And that's all I'm saying, and that's why I feel the way I feel. These people that say, well, if you can't use guns, then you use a car or you can use a knife. Find me, someone that killed 58 people with a knife. It certainly didn't happen as far as I know. So that's why I ask you that question.
A lot of knife killings in London, Brian.
No, not 58 people. But, Bob, that's why I ask you that question, and that's why I feel the way I feel. Yes, in a perfect world, you never want to make that decision.
Bob,
you'd want armed people in there, of course.
Bob, you bring up how a person or a gun never pulls its own trigger. But even if a person pulls the trigger of a gun, what's actually killing another human being is the bullet, right?
Okay.
Was that a question?
It's true.
No. But at what point do you have to take into consideration the type of bullets that are used?
Yes, we should probably outlaw bullets. The problem with the misinterpretation of ballistics when you get into that is the military ammunition generally not used for home defense because it passes through walls, it passes through people. I've worked cases where we went through 4 walls across a yard and hit a neighbor. Hollow point, soft point, what the media sometimes calls cop killer bullets, are much safer because they tend to stop in the first person or not go through the wall completely if they hit a wall. So the military ammunition is actually safer for the hollow point ammunition is actually safer for self-defense. And then they turn around and say, well, these are cop killer bullets because they're hollow points.
You know what? I think Chris Rock, though, said it best.
They're not.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think Chris Rock, though, said it best when he said, we should charge $100 per bullet, then we wouldn't have all these shootings and the gang-related shootings. Charge $100 per bullet. That's I don't know. I think he was joking.
That is one of the things proposed by the left side now in Congress is to tax firearms at 50% of manufacturing cost and tax ammunition at 30%.
But I think
or the other way around, which would double the cost of firearms. As if that would stop gangsters from buying or stealing firearms.
Probably not, but I think we all agree on one thing, and that is we do not want to get these weapons in the hands of bad people that want to do harm to innocent people. All right, welcome back. It is the Vegas Take, Sharp and Shapiro. So glad you could join us. By the way, coming up in hour number 3, You could call him disgraced former NBA referee Tim Donaghy. He went to jail.
Yeah, he served time. So
he served
that's
time.
not good.
Some would say for fixing basketball games. New movie out called Inside Game about his life. It's out in theaters. So he'll be coming up here in hour number 3. But joining us in studio, it's Bob Irwin, former owner of the gun store, author of the book The Reality of Armed Self-Defense. So we talked a lot about the gun control issues. I want to move on now because there's a new story out in regards to Colin Kaepernick. He's going to be holding a Saturday workout in Atlanta, and all NFL teams are invited. Let me give you, and I'll try to be as precise and fast as I can because I want to hear from all of you, but here's my opinion on Colin Kaepernick in a nutshell, okay? I'm going to say his heart was in the right place when he decided to take a knee. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he does care about this issue, even though some people will question the timing of why he did it. Why did he do it when his career was on the down? Why did he do it? Why didn't he do it when he was, a Super Bowl quarterback? But that's okay. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt on that. Here's my problem with Colin Kaepernick. Number one, and this is probably my biggest issue with Colin Kaepernick. Many players in the NFL have gone to Washington and spoke to politicians about this issue. Many players in the NFL, both current and former, have gone into the police departments, have spoken to police chiefs of how we can make a change. Colin Kaepernick has never done that. I'll tell you what Colin Kaepernick has done. He has raised some money for charity, okay? He has donated money to charity. But to me, if you take a knee to try to raise the issue, and if people out there don't believe or didn't know that there were issues between minorities and police officers, then you're a moron. Okay, so I don't understand why just taking a knee will get anything done. That's number one. Number two, he has profited and made more money from taking a knee off the field than if he was a player on the field. That is another issue that I have with Colin Kaepernick. Here's the third issue I have. You cannot be considered to be taken seriously when you wear a shirt promoting Castro. Okay, Castro was an evil, murderous dictator. You might as well wear an Adolf Hitler shirt and walk into a synagogue. When you wear a shirt, a Castro shirt, and you're hanging out in Miami, you are a doofus and you are a moron, and nobody can defend that. I don't think Colin Kaepernick is very intelligent. And then he wears pig socks, depicting all police officers as pigs. Do I believe that there are some police officers out there? And Bob, you're a former police officer, okay? When you see somebody like Colin Kaepernick wear pig socks, how can you take somebody like that seriously? So those are the reasons why I don't like Colin. This is why I think he is a fraud, and I don't think he's extremely intelligent. You being a former police officer, Bob, what do you think about this?
Well, I'm not obviously really fond of his police pig socks and comments about police. The overwhelming majority of officers try to do it right and try to do it fair and on and on. There are, as with any profession, there's 2% of them that are jerks. Unless we're talking lawyers, then it's up to like 5%. But no, I disagree with with that altogether. I'm not going to pass on his football skills. If he wants to have a tryout, great.
Does he deserve another chance, Bob?
I think almost everybody in the world deserves another chance.
Mm-hmm. All right, fair enough. Chris, what do you say to that?
All right, so a couple of things here, Brian. All right, you pointed obviously you don't like the man. Okay, you pointed that out. You've been very clear about that.
I had no
but
problem
here's
with
the
him
deal.
before.
Well, here's the deal. Okay, we're talking about two separate things here. You're talking about how much he buys in to this issue of social awareness regarding law enforcement. Okay, and whether it's 10% or 20% or 50%, that's irrelevant. Okay, because we're talking about that part of it, and then we're also talking about whether or not he should be in the NFL right now as a quarterback.
I'll give you my opinion on that.
And that
I didn't give my opinion on that.
That's well. You're basically you asked a question.
I'm telling you
whether
why
or
I don't
not
like the guy.
he quote unquote deserves a chance, as if he's done something wrong, as if he's been convicted of a crime,
Chris.
as if he's done something. The guy, okay, is being blackballed by the NFL, okay, and he's been vilified in all types of media. Because
that's
of
not
his
true.
perception.
He's
not true.
Not all types of media. That's not true.
Okay, so you're trying to tell me, okay, that there's positions for 3 quarterbacks, right? At least 2 quarterbacks on every NFL roster.
Can I give you
You're trying to tell me for the last 5 to 7 years, all right, Colin Kaepernick is not good enough to be on a roster in the NFL?
Let me respond to what you said. First of all, let me give you my opinion. If an NFL team is willing to sign him, I have no problem with that. But here's where we talk about, everyone talks about, well, he has the right to take a knee. Let me tell you something.
Well, he does.
Okay, well, let me explain. If your employer thinks, for whatever reason, that you're hurting their business, if your employer says, listen, these are our rules, you need to abide by them, or you can be fired, guess what? The employer has the right to do that. Listen, you have the right.
We got into this many times, Brian. Okay,
That is
he's
the
not
law.
the average Joe. He's not a mailman. He's not a
Where am
guy
I
that punches
wrong?
the clock.
Where am I
he's
wrong?
a public figure. Okay, that is a professional athlete.
It doesn't matter.
There's a reason why
Doesn't
they are
matter.
kneeling. It's because they're trying
Chris,
to bring attention.
there are laws
What do you
and
mean it
rules.
doesn't matter? It does
If
matter.
The
These guys aren't just regular
The employer
employees.
has the right to tell you that you can or can't take a knee.
Absolutely, they have the right.
That's my
okay?
point.
But that doesn't. But that doesn't mean when they go about protesting or whatever it is that they do. Okay, it doesn't necessarily. They're very selective as far as how
It doesn't matter
NFL
whether
teams
they're
or
selective.
NBA teams
It doesn't
handle
matter.
It, okay,
The law is the law, and your employer has
the
the right.
law?
He can go on a public
we're
sidewalk.
talking about protesting.
He can go on a public
It's not
sidewalk and
illegal.
say and do whatever he wants to. But when you're working for somebody and you're earning paychecks, your boss has the right to tell you whether you can or cannot do something like that and take a political stance and take a knee. He has the right to go on his front lawn and do whatever the hell he wants to do. He has the right to go on social media.
So Brian, so Colin Kaepernick kneeled. What about all the other NFL players that kneeled down? Should they be out of the NFL too? Should they have been?
Okay.
Should they have faced the consequences
Let me
that he
tell you.
faced?
Let me be very clear.
You're
on
talking.
this.
You're saying
Okay,
they
first of
follow
all-
law.
First of all,
it's every NFL
Colin
team does the same
Kaepernick-
thing.
Excuse me. Colin Kaepernick is a second-rate quarterback. He's not a starting quarterback. He would not be a
Did I
starting
say
quarterback.
he was
me
an
finish.
MVP candidate?
Let me finish. So the fact that you want to sit here and say that he could do one of these teams such due diligence and help them.
He
get
should
to
be on a
his-
roster, yes,
Yeah.
is
Okay.
what I'm
Fine.
saying.
If you think but there are owners and managers out there that feel like it's not worth the risk to sign this guy because of the backlash. Because
Exactly.
regardless of whether you think or not, there are fans out there that will not go to games. There are people that will not watch the games because Colin Kaepernick is on that roster. Now, I don't agree with that, but the bottom line is if the NFL feels and these owners feel like it's not worth the risk of a second-rate backup quarterback, then I don't blame them for not signing the guy. And by the way, stop making him out to be the damn victim. He's not a victim. The guy is making millions and millions of dollars off the field.
He is.
Absolutely, with
Well,
Nike.
he got
Last
the
I
Nike
heard,
because he got the
last
Nike
I
deal
heard he signed a
because of that,
$10
yeah.
million
Okay.
contract with Nike.
Look,
You're telling me he would have made $10 million as an NFL?
That doesn't keep him away from being a victim when it comes to
He's not
the
a victim.
circumstances
Stop.
regarding
I'm
because of his NFL career. That's why he's a
I'm
victim.
pretty
It's not
sure
because of how much money he's making or because he got the Nike deal. I mean, come on. You got to be. I mean, you got to be. You
Go ahead,
got to be
JD.
straight across the board here.
I'm pretty sure that he won an Emmy for his Nike commercial, by the way. It was
Which is ridiculous.
That's fine.
It was an award-winning commercial.
What Brian's referring to, though, is the Nike deal. That's the millions of dollars. That Colin Kaepernick, you're telling me Colin Kaepernick
let me
hasn't
open up the
lost
phone
millions
lines.
of dollars because
Hang
of
on.
this circumstance?
Take a breath. Hold on. Let me open up the phone lines. For those of you out there that want to be a part of this conversation, do you think that Colin Kaepernick deserves a second chance in the NFL? I don't have a problem with somebody giving him another chance, but I also don't have
As
a
a
problem.
tight end.
I also don't have a hold on. I also don't have a problem with the NFL saying no. Here's the number if you want to be a part of this conversation. Your thoughts on Colin Kaepernick, 702-257-5396. Again, that number to call if you want to be a part of this conversation in regards to Colin Kaepernick, 702-257-5396. Again, Bob, I know you're a former law enforcement. How long were you a police officer, by the way?
I was in law enforcement, bailiff and constable for 26 years.
Okay, 26 years. So let me ask you this question. When people say that they believe that the majority of police officers are racist, we had somebody that came in yesterday, Stretch Sanders, who thinks that the majority of police officers are bad people, are racists. How does that make you feel as someone that served?
They're wrong. The problem is you have to enforce laws, and if the usual thing is I get stopped all the time because I'm black, and that's the most common complaint. It's what's caused all the problems in Arizona. And I defy anyone in this room with all these smoke windows and stuff to tell me when you're behind a car what the race of the driver is. You cannot tell. You can tell how he's driving, but you can't tell who you're pulling over by race. It's virtually impossible. I want to just throw in one thing about your argument. I've had at my gun shop, when I had the gun store, we had employees who were politically on one side or the other of the gun issue.
Right.
And when they would express their opinion to the customers, I would warn them.
Mm-hmm.
And when they continue to do it, I let them go.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're standing behind my counter, they are making statements on behalf of the gun store. And if it isn't a down the middle, we try to stay out of that issue type of thing, they can politic somewhere else. And I agree with you on Kaepernick with that statement.
Mm-hmm.
The employer has the right to say, when I'm paying you and you're on the field,
Yeah.
you got to play by my rules.
Okay.
But I'm telling you guys, there's a muddying of the waters here because we're talking about public figures, okay? There's a reason why. Look, there's a reason why, okay? Professional athletes protest on a national stage when they're on when the national anthem's going on and, there's a possibility of exposure, all right? We're not talking about people that work at a gun store. We're not talking about people that are postmen. We're not talking about people that work 9 to 5 punching the clock. I'm not talking about that.
No, we're talking about a backup
public
quarterback.
Figures. So there's a reason. Well, yeah, exactly. But
With his career going down the
and by the
toilet.
way, he spearheaded this whole thing. So that's why he's the figurehead.
Let's take some phone calls. We got phone lines are jammed at 257-5396. What do you think about this Colin Kaepernick thing? Apparently, he's got a Saturday workout and he's inviting all NFL teams. Do you think he deserves a second chance? Do you agree with me and Bob? Don't agree with some of the stuff he's done off the field, the way he's gone about it. Do you agree with Chris? 257-5396. Why don't we start off with Mike? Mike, thanks for calling into the Vegas Take. What do you think about this?
Yes, as a business owner, I would agree that while he's on the field, that's the property of the team, or certainly, influenced by the league. And the owner has every right to say, "Don't offend half my customers." So if it's the flip side, and the guy's wearing a MAGA hat or a shirt, and he's alienating all that crowd, and it's costing me as an employer business, I absolutely have the right. And if Kaepernick wanted to, go to Congress, or like some of the things you mentioned, how much time and effort has he put into this subject beyond the 2 minutes of the anthem to have a case? As far as giving him a second chance, okay, maybe, but the rules are clear. While you're at work, you don't alienate half my customers.
I agree, Mike. I think it sounds pretty simple to me, Mike. I agree with you 100%, and we appreciate the phone call. Thank you very much. 257-5396 is the number to call. Let's go to Nick. Nick, you're next on the Vegas Take. What do you say about all this?
Hey guys. You know what? The Kevin Kaepernick thing, it's not muddied waters. His First Amendment rights were not violated in any way, shape, or form by the government of the United States. And that's what you're protected from.
That's a good point.
He's an employee that was representing his franchise and the franchisee on the field at the time. He starts when he walks into the stadium, not when the national anthem's going. The moment he's putting the uniform on and representing the team, that's when he starts.
So you're just basically dismissing my entire point was that he's a public figure and, there's a reason behind the protest on a national stage. It's not because he, look, let me ask you this question then. So okay, Colin Kaepernick has been blackballed out of the NFL. I think we can all agree with that, right? He's not had an opportunity to get a job in the NFL.
He's not been blackballed. He put himself there.
Okay, so let me ask you this question.
Hold on.
Your job, you would lose your job.
All right. How about this?
So would
Okay,
I.
let me ask you a very simple question. What about all the other NFL players that have knelt, during the national? And by the way, we're not talking about wearing a MAGA hat. We're not talking about wearing a T-shirt that says
Chris, they're not allowed to kneel anymore.
No,
they're not kneeling anymore.
No, you got to understand what I'm saying, okay? Why back then did all the other NFL players who knelt down not get punished by their NFL team that is so upset because, it's destroying our product?
Eventually they were.
Weren't. Nobody was fined. Nobody was kicked.
All right,
no
let
other
him
player
respond,
was kicked
Chris.
out of the league.
All right, Chris, let him respond.
Am I wrong?
Go ahead, Nick.
Eric Reed.
Go ahead.
I'm not running those NFL teams, so
Okay.
I can't respond to why the NFL or the other one didn't do that.
Okay.
You're asking about him in particular, and him in particular, that's what the NFL chose to do. The NFL chose to close employment. Well, now he's unemployed, just like everybody else that would be in a situation where they're doing that at work.
Well, I think there's a combination of reasons why his
Still receiving
employment.
money from sponsors and benefiting from what he did.
Absolutely, Nick, and that's a very valid
Look,
point.
I think there's a number of reasons why his employment was quote unquote pulled. Okay, by the way, it was pulled by the team. Okay, that he was playing for, and there's a lot of reasons to what you guys are saying as far as his production on the field. Okay, yes, he wasn't playing as great. He wasn't the quarterback that he once was. That was combined with this.
Chris, I do find it interesting that all of a sudden, hold on, all of a sudden he decides to take a stand on this issue when his career is going down the toilet. Why didn't he do it when he was a Super Bowl quarterback? Why does he wait to do it when he was on the end of the bench at the end of a contract? Explain that to me.
You can question his motivation.
You're damn
but
right
the
I'm
bottom
questioning
line,
it.
Okay, so you're saying that there is not an issue when it comes to social injustice.
Of course
with
there
certain
is.
law enforcement
Of course
officials.
there is. Of course there
well,
is.
Then that's
But why does he
that's
decide?
the topic he's trying to bring to the forefront.
And why does he decide to bring up the topic when his career is going down the you know what?
Look, I can't answer that question. I'm not Colin Kaepernick.
Of course you can't
I
answer
can't
it.
answer the question
Yeah,
as to
but he
how
decides to
much
get-
he is,
All right, let's take another
in
call.
depth as far as the topic is concerned. I don't know.
Poor
But
Bob
it
is
was
going to
brought
lose
to
his
the
hearing. He's
forefront.
in the middle of this conversation. 257-5396 is the number to call. Let's go to Calvin, 257-5396. Calvin, you're next on the Vegas Take. What do you think about all this?
You know, I was a cop for 30 years here. This man can wear whatever he wants to wear. If I walk into a house, a guy got an F the police shirt on, and he's calling for service, I still have to service that guy. And as far as Colin Kaepernick, if he goes out and tries out for a team, if someone lets him and he beats out the other players, he should be allowed to play.
Okay, Calvin, let me respond to that. Okay, first of all, we're talking about a pace of employment. If someone's wearing an F the police in his own house, he can wear whatever he wants to. It is your duty to do your job. However, if he walks into his place of work, his place of business, and a cubicle, an office, and he walks in there with a shirt that says F the police, his employer has the right to say, you can't wear that, you're fired.
Okay, but we're talking about. Well, are we talking about? We're talking about kneeling for the national anthem. You guys are making the equation as if he's wearing offensive stuff.
Chris, Eric
it's
Reed,
kneeling
Eric Reed was
for the
blackballed
national
from the league
anthem.
for 6 months. If Colin Kaepernick, first of all, he's had opportunities to show his ability at lower leagues. We don't know if he can still play the game. I know that in his last
well, that's
year.
not really the discussion here about how good he is as a
Of
quarterback.
course it is. That's the discussion. Is he good enough? Is the juice worth?
If he's not good, he's not good enough.
Is the risk? Is the risk worth the reward?
I see. Now I'm just going to let you guys dialogue because you're not going to listen to your callers.
Calvin, I want you to respond. Go ahead. I was just going to tell them to be quiet so you can respond. Go ahead.
I just answered the thing about the police thing because I was a police officer. I don't care what people do. I'm going to still service you. But the fact of the matter is, this man was a good quarterback, whether he was in the tubes or not. If he beats somebody out that's playing now and a team gives him a chance, he should have the right to play.
I don't have a problem with that, Calvin. I agree with you. My only point is I understand why certain owners of teams do not want him on the team. They feel like it could be a distraction.
I actually work with some police officers who will not pledge to the flag because of their beliefs and other things. I don't care what they do. My job is to make sure I represent this country the way I feel it should be represented.
Calvin, I don't disagree with you, but again, millions and millions of people aren't, the national anthem isn't being played every single day you went to work as a police officer. They are in the NFL. I appreciate the phone call, Calvin. Thank you very much. 25, yes, thank you. I appreciate it. And thank you for your service as a police officer. We appreciate that as well. 257-5396 is the number to call. Let's go to Sean. Sean, you're next on the Vegas Take. What do you think about all this?
I was just wanted to make a point about like police brutality and all that stuff. I'm a African American male from Illinois, Central Illinois, not Chicago. It's a little bit different up there. Every time I've been pulled over, there's been a gun pulled out on me every single time. Like, I don't have any felonies. I have no criminal background or anything like that. And I'm from what most would call, a lower income area or
Can
whatever.
I ask you a question, Sean? When you are pulled over, are you complying with police officers?
Oh, every time.
Okay.
My dad taught me, whenever they're right, the person with the gun is right.
Sean, you know what?
That's true.
You know what I would say would be a good response to all this, and I'm sorry that happened to you. I really am, and I believe you. What I believe, body cameras need to be on 24/7. I believe if a police officer turns off his body camera, he should be fired. Body cameras need to be on 24/7. They will protect people like you, and they will protect police officers in the case of frivolous lawsuits. So,
exactly.
Couple of questions,
I've seen
Sean.
both sides. I've seen where officers they put themselves in the line of fire and all that, and I do respect that. But at the same time, when I, as a law-abiding citizen, I can see where where the protest comes from, because I've experienced it.
Yeah.
And the only time my life's ever been on the line is when somebody in blue with the badge is pointing at me, and then for like something like a sticker or maybe even a speeding thing or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I can understand where the protest comes from. Is basically the point I wanted to make.
Well, and listen, Sean, I understand where the protest is coming from also. And by the way, thank you for the call. I just disagree with the way Colin Kaepernick is going about it. You can protest, you can do stuff like that, but why hasn't Colin Kaepernick gone to Washington? Why has he not spoken to law enforcement? All he's done is insult law enforcement officers. That's not going to change the laws, because what are we really talking about here? What is going to help the relationship between minorities and police officers? Well, number one, let's change some of the laws on the books. And I personally believe a body camera that is on 24/7 with audio and video will, if a police officer is thinking of doing something illegal, that will certainly maybe will change their mind, and then you'll have lawsuits involved, that sort of thing. It also protects police officers. 257-5396 is the number to call. Let's go to Megan. Megan, you're next on the Vegas Take.
Hey, I'm just questioning you guys still talking about the Super Bowl and how, or not Super Bowl, sorry, football, and how he should have been fired.
Yes.
Yeah.
You still on topic with that? Yeah.
We are.
Absolutely. So you guys have a set of rules there at the radio station where you can only say certain things, correct?
Absolutely.
And
Sure.
Well, you can't
don't,
use certain words.
Like, for example, if I went on the air and I said a racial slur, a homophobic slur,
Right.
absolutely, I deserve to be fired.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So he's employed pretty much the way it is, and they have every right if it's not appropriate and it's their lie, or it's basically what they want, pretty much. He has every right to be fired.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you, Megan, and we appreciate the call. Yeah, it's
yeah,
pretty.
absolutely.
I appreciate it. Yeah, it's pretty cut and dry.
Thanks for the call, honey.
Bob, I want to ask you, was that your wife?
That was my wife.
Oh, hello. I did not know that. Thank you for calling in, Megan. That was very nice. I don't think she's ever called in before. We've been doing this for almost 2 years. Bob, I want you to address that gentleman who called in before her, who says that he gets pulled over at gunpoint and he believes because he's an African American. What would you say to that?
That may be his experience or his impression. Generally, when somebody pulls over a vehicle, if you think it's in a dangerous neighborhood or the car may be cold registered or any number of reasons, generally our policy is to put our hand on our gun, or if it looks really dangerous, take the gun out, holding it behind our leg.
You never know who you're going to be confronted by.
Lean into the car, and if it looks safe, then as you turn to walk back to do whatever you're going to do, you put your gun back in the holster, and the guy never knew it was out.
You ever, I hate to ask you this question, but did you ever have to pull the trigger?
No.
Never. Good for you. And you know what? Sometimes it's not their fault. Sometimes they're put in situations. See, I think the biggest issue.
And I was going to ask him what kind of car is he driving? How does he typically dress? Does he have let's say dreadlocks, something along those lines? Because I'm sure that could be taken into consideration as well when you're a police officer and you pull over someone of color.
Why should someone wearing dreadlocks ever have to be taken into consideration?
I'm just saying. I'm sure that could be taken into consideration when someone pulls over someone of color.
Why would someone if a police officer takes into consideration?
I don't understand why of color matter is pulling over anybody, right? I mean, I don't think
my
of color
personal
should be
opinion.
Is
my personal opinion, and I'm just going to say this, okay? If you pull somebody over as a police officer because somebody has dreadlocks, you're a dumb racist bigot.
I totally agree, but that's why. But it doesn't make any sense why if he has no record at all whatsoever, and say he's driving a
well, it does make sense in some circumstances. There is a small minority of police officers that are racist. It does make sense to me. And sadly, I know, Bob, you don't want to hear stuff like that, but it's just my personal opinion. There's bad apples in every bunch, right?
No, I've already agreed with that. That 2% of any trade
there's bad lawyers.
Is idiots, unless it's lawyers, then it's 5%.
And those police officers,
15%. Then it's 70%.
Yeah, that's true. Well, Bob,
and
listen.
they're all really dumb.
We're up against a break here. Bob, I always appreciate it when you come in studio. Thank you so much for being here. And listen, these issues are not going away, so we'll love to have you in again soon. Thank you so much for being here. We really do appreciate it.
Oh, thanks very much for having me.
Yeah, good lively discussion, Bob. It always is here.
Check out firedupwithbob.irwin.com. That's my blog and website on these issues. firedupwithbobirwin.com.
All right, check it out. Check it out, Bob. Appreciate your time. All right, coming up next, it is former NBA referee Tim Donaghy. He is coming up next. You are listening to the Vegas Take right here on the all-new 101.5 FM, 720 AM, KDAWN.